Alright, hello once again, Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College. I've been going through a series of videos I'm making based on Murox HTML5 and CSS3 4th edition textbook. This is one of the two textbooks that's used for the Rankin Technical College Application and Web Development, or AWD1000 class, Web Development Technologies. I've gone through the first 8 chapters, skipping 9 and 10 for now. I've gone through 11 through 15, skipping 16 for now, and I've done 17, so I'm going to finish up with 18, 19, and 20. In fact, I've done 17 and 18, so it's time to go into 19. How JavaScript and Jquery are used to enhance web pages. I always put it this way, that they provide interactivity in web pages. Now, the thing to realize is when we get done with this book, the next thing we're going to do is to go over the 20 chapters in this book, or the 18 chapters. Murox JavaScript and Jquery 3rd edition. The reason I'm mentioning that to you right now is this chapter that we're about to go through is kind of an intro to that book. I'm not going to go through anything in a lot of depth and breadth of coverage. It doesn't pay when we're going to be covering that material in an entire book shortly. All right. So, we want to talk about how JavaScript works in this whole thing. And it's funny, when I started at Rankin, even though I had a lot of teaching experience, they made me go through new teacher training, which was actually pretty good. All right? And the reason I'm telling you that is they wanted us to do a presentation, about a 15-minute presentation on anything we wanted. So I started mine out with a 3-legged stool. And I said, what are you talking about? I probably couldn't find the picture I was looking for. It might have been this one or one like it. But what I did with this picture, now that's going to be too small, but okay, that's fine, was I grabbed it, and then over here I wrote HTML, over here I wrote CSS, and over here I wrote JavaScript. And the idea is, just like each part of a 3-legged stool, each part in here has its own place. We talked quite a bit about HTML so far, hypertext markup language, and how it's used to create your website's content. We've talked quite a bit, and we still have quite a bit more to talk about for CSS cascading style sheets, which is how to change your presentation. But we have talked little to nothing about JavaScript, the 3rd leg of the stool, which again, as I mentioned, for lack of better words, is oftentimes used to do things like provide interactivity on a page. So we'll talk about how JavaScript works. Just like with CSS, there's 3 ways that you can add JavaScript in HTML. We'll introduce you to what's called the DOM, the Document Object Model. And what's important about the DOM, you'll see that it's in here quite a few times, is once you can master programming the DOM, there's not much on a web page that you're not able to change. All right? And I always kind of look at it with JavaScript. You want to be able to make changes while the user has the website up and running. All right? We'll also get into Jquery. And it's kind of important that you realize that what Jquery is it's a JavaScript library. So it's kind of like, in some ways, it's kind of supercharged JavaScript. It's thousands of lines of routines that have been written for you if you bring the Jquery library into your program. So how does JavaScript fit into the client-server architecture here? Well, we went through this before, but now notice with the HTML response, it can include HTML and it can include JavaScript. So here's a real simple example. Notice it gives you the current time and date. All right? But the big thing on this is if I go and refresh my browser, it refreshes the time. If I happen to have my browser up at 11:59 p.m. and 50 seconds, and it gives me the day, and I refresh it again after midnight, the day will change. Possibly the month will change, possibly the year will change, etc. So what do we have here? Well, you'll notice if you look, our JavaScript is inline. We're writing it right in here, and it's your JavaScript. When you write it like this, it's put within script tags. Beginning script tag, ending script tag. Beginning script tag, ending script tag. All right? Now, var means we're creating a new variable that's called today, and it's going to hold today's date. And what that date holds is basically the date and the time. And then we say current date, and we ask just for the date part. So that's giving us this, that line right there. Then we do it again. We get another date object. All right. We put a copyright symbol in here. Now we're getting the year. So this should say copyright. Now it'd be 2019. All right. Then a space, or I'm sorry, a comma. San Joaquin Valley Town Hall. So that would show you this. We can also, just like you do it with CSS, you can put your script tag in your head section and tell it to load a file right there. That can have code right in it, or in this case, it's referencing like we would reference an external CSS file. Now we're referencing an external JavaScript file. Now, unlike when we worked with CSS and you had your link tag, etc., a beginning script tag must have an ending script tag. All right? Here's JavaScript that we've embedded right into the head section. So again, there's 3 different ways you can do it. You can do it externally. You can embed it in the head. You can embed it in the body where needed. Now, again, remember, this is just designed to be an introduction to this. So what you see on your screen right now is what's referred to as the DOM, or the document object model, that gets built for every web page you have. You don't see this, but it's something that gets built for you. This becomes unbelievably important that when you want to program something on a web page using JavaScript, that anything that's on here, I'd say anything from here on down in the blue and anything in here, etc., that you want to be able to manipulate programmatically, you want to make sure it has a unique ID associated with it. That's what a lot of the DOM is about. All right, the DOM is what's called a nodal or a node structure. It uses a bunch of this stuff. This is the key, the reason that you want to create an ID with everything, so that you can call the getElement singular by ID method and pass it that ID. All right, there's some examples here. Again, I don't want to confuse you. We'll do some of this, and then we'll make it even simpler by creating what's called an alias. So rather than us having to write this all the time, document.getElement by ID with an ID, we'll just give it an alias of $, which says we'll just put in $, with whatever the ID is, and that'll write that for us then. Scripting the DOM, the idea again is you can write things right to a web page as the program is running. You can grab information from a web page as the program is running, etc. All right, a page that uses JavaScript button, yeah, we can create our own buttons with JavaScript and make them do what we want them to do. All right, so this is the DOM event cycle. Notice you load a page. As it says, JavaScript is event driven, so it sits there and waits for something to happen. It waits for you to press a button or to click a link or to do something. When that event that it's got code associated with it occurs, a script executes. It's possible that that script will modify the document object model and update the page. This is an email list application. This is actually a great example. It's right near the beginning of the book, so we'll talk about it. Let's just take a look at what it looks like. All right. So you'll notice that, forget about the CSS, which is what makes the please join our email list blue. It puts the blue border around it, and it makes this entry must equal first entry, and this field is required. It makes that text red. That's the CSS. Forget about the HTML. That's what creates all the elements that you see on the page. Concentrate on the logic for the JavaScript. So this says, okay, we put something here. Now we didn't put anything here. We have to check and make sure these are the same thing. If all of these fields are required, we have to make sure, A, every field there, since they're all required, has a value in them. B, that the email address that's on the top equals the email address that's down below it. C, that the first name has got something in it. We might even do further tests to make sure that this is a valid email, and that is. And when I say that it's a valid email, I don't mean that there is a Zach@yahoo.com. I don't know that, but I want to make sure that it is formatted correctly. And here's the associated code. That's pretty heavy to get into right now. All right, we'll go into Jquery.com. This is pretty much exactly what the Jquery website looks like. It's at Jquery.com. Not very pretty, but very functional. You want to load Jquery directly, you can click the big button right here. You can go down later, and you can load it by not loading it, but rather by using a CDN or a content delivery network, where you basically put a hyperlink into it to a copy of Jquery that's on the web. You can click here for downloads. This is a real big one right there, because this is the API documentation. This shows you everything that's available to you in Jquery. As it says, Jquery offers you dozens of methods. It's probably hundreds. All right. They have been tested for cross-browser compatibility. Again, you can copy your own copy from Jquery and include it, or you can include it from what's called a CDN. So that would go out to the Jquery website and grab it for you. One of the good things for all of you who take this class is once we get to this point, you'll have a fairly strong knowledge, at least hopefully you will, of CSS. And Jquery works with CSS selectors. This says select all H2 tags. This says select everything with an ID of email underscore address. This says select everything with a class of warning. All right. And again, I'm not going to go over this stuff with you because it's not my goal to have you look at that and go, I never get that. Everybody can get it. It's just a matter of time, patience, and practice. All right. So with Jquery, we can, again, remember Jquery is a JavaScript library. When they first wrote this thing up here on slide 20, they used straight JavaScript, and then they come back and rewrite it using Jquery. One of the advantages of using Jquery is almost always it's going to result in less code. All right, sometimes quite a substantial amount of less code. Jquery typically claims that for every 10 lines of JavaScript you'll write 1 line of Jquery. Can be true. Sometimes it's not that cut and dried. All right, so they give you a bunch of code. So earlier we did a user interface image swap. All right, and I believe we did that with CSS. You can do the same type of thing, and you can do it with Jquery with very little code. We're going to do this. All right. You can write slideshows with Jquery. We're going to do that. All right. Zach's recommendations for JavaScript websites. Well, you can go take a look at those. I will mention, and I've used this before, I've told you about this before, but we're just about finished, that I would strongly recommend as you start to learn this stuff, you go out to w3schools.com. They've got, under their tutorials, they've got a JavaScript tutorial. They also, under their tutorials, have got a very nice Jquery tutorial. That's a super good place to get started. And if you want, there are so many good sites out there for JavaScript and for Jquery, but what is it, dev.mozilla? I'm doing that off the top of my head. Okay, yeah, that is it. The developer.mozilla.org. All right, again, doesn't look like much, but if I come through here and I want to search for JavaScript, all right, and this is the whole thing on JavaScript. Notice, beginner's guide, doesn't look like that much from here. There is a boatload of stuff in here. I don't know if they have a Jquery link in here as well, but I'm going to look. Not found. Okay. All right, but we will take a look at a lot of nice sites that will give you information on that when we get to that point. All right. So we're just about finished. Yeah, a couple of Jquery things that you can work with. We'll work with widgets. We'll look at tabs. We'll look at accordion sliders. All right. We'll look at this BX slider, etc. So that's pretty much it for Chapter 19. When I come back, I am going to be going over Chapter 20, which is when and how to use third-party development tools. I'll be back with that presentation shortly.